a rough time in my years in New York. I was a production assistant, and I had been a production assistant for this TV show for a full year. And I was pretty much the oldest production assistant on the show, and everybody seemed to be moving up to like associate producer, head of the audience. I couldn't get a break, and I really tried hard, but it was just like almost like I was like invisible, except to one person, and his name was Saul, and he was a security guard at the TV studio, and he always worked like the front gate. There was like a gate, and it was on Sony Studios at like 55th and 10th Ave. And Saul was like the man. Every time I walked through the doors, like we'd have to drive from the off production offices in the van. We'd get out, and he'd be there, and he would see me, and he would just light up. And he was about like 5 feet tall. He was like from the Bronx. He always had his Yankees jacket on. He had like greasy curly hair. It looked like a steak and cheese, like a steak and cheese, his hair. And but a big smile, and he'd be like, "Hey, Adam, how you doing?" And he had the gold chain. I go, "Hey, Saul," and then he like always put out his hand, and it was like, and I just shake his hand. He just loved shaking hands, and like I'd be doing different things, setting up tents outside when it rained, and he'd just be sitting there, and he'd go, and like. I'm heterosexual, but every time like I touched his hand, it felt love, and it felt like someone like loved me, liked me a lot. And at that time, I was just so frustrated with my life, and I'd been a production assistant on different shows now for like 5 years, and I just couldn't get a break. But Saul was there. So one day I was like filling up I did craft service. I did everything. I was like everybody's bitch, I used to say. But I'd also say Wade's the glue. He holds it all together. And no one was, who's Wade? I'm like. So one day I go into the bathroom and it stinks, and like I'm like I can't pee because it's that bad, and then they flush and they come out, and it's Saul, and he's so happy to see me. And I go, "Hey, Saul." He's like, "Put it there, Adam." And so I shook his hand, and he tapped me, and he squeezed, and then he just left. Like 2 hours later, he's at the gate, he's eating popcorn, and he offers me popcorn. And for this whole year, I've been eating his popcorn, and I said, "You know what? Giving it up. Giving up popcorn, Saul. Giving it up." I'm like, how do you tell someone you love? So it was a Wednesday morning, and I interviewed to be the new receptionist, and seemed like a step down from a production assistant, but there was actually good because you get to talk to everybody, and that's what I wanted, and I didn't get it, and I was just really down. But Wednesday was also Meatball Hoagie Day, and Meatball Hoagie Day was my favorite. The meatballs that the craft service made at the studio, they weren't like marinara sauce and meatballs. It was like sweet soy sauce, and they would put them in this big pan, and they would drum it up, and to me, like it was like like filet mignon when you ate these, and it was just my favorite meal. And I was feeling bad for myself, so this was the day I was going to give everybody my indirect fuck you, and I was going to cut everybody in line, because I had to do all the, it'd be laid out, and then I'd have to open up all the foil and stuff. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to take the tray. I'm going to eat first. I'm important today. So they announce on the walkie-talkies, 10-4, Meatball Hoagie Day ready to commence, and I'm taking everything off, and I put about 7 meatballs on this little hoagie. And then I put a little juice, because I like the juice. And everybody's in line, and they're like, what is he doing? And I'm looking at everybody like, no, I'm eating. And it smells so good, and all I had was Cheerios all day. And then I turn around, and it's Saul. And first the thing he said was, Farrah Fawcett or Suzanne Summers? Because we always had this debate because he talked about Playboy pictorials. And there was our running thing, and both a beautiful woman, but we always decided on Farrah Fawcett because there was the pictorial she did in the late 90s, she rolled around in paint, and we would say, she's the artist. So I said, Farrah, and he smiled, and then he goes, what's your favorite kind of dog? And we would have this other thing. And I go, what do you think? Wolf dog. And then he smiled again. And then he said, in front of everybody, he's saying this. And he's like, what's harder? Playing Connect 4 or playing chess? And I'm like, Connect 4. And he's just so happy that I'm getting all the answers to our conversations correct. And then he says, Yankees, Red Sox. And that's where he busts my balls because I was a Red Sox fan. And I like, you got me, Saul. And then he put his hand out. And I go to give him a little bash. And he shakes his hand no. And then I go, want to do this, like the old Oakland A's. He wants the hand. And I just break, and I said, I'm not shaking your hand today, Saul. And he's like, why? And then I just, Saul, you take craps, you don't wash your hands, okay? I'm not shaking you. It's Meatball Hoagie Day. I just want my sub. I just want my hoagie, Saul. Do you understand? And then he looks clueless and sad and naive, all these things in one. And he's like, what do you mean? I go, Saul, you shake my hands 100 times a day and you don't wash your hands. That's not cool, Saul. That's not cool. And then for the first time, I noticed everybody in line has finally noticed me, yelling at my only friend, Saul. And he starts to walk away. And I still ate my hoagie, but it was with guilt. There was 2 weeks left before the show got canceled, and those 2 weeks were really awkward. I didn't really get to talk to Saul much. One, because I didn't know what to say. And Saul was just really embarrassed, and Sony Studios had hooked up this hand sanitizer machine by the gate, and every time someone walked by, he would do it and do his hands. So he was kind of like Scarlet Letter. So the show got canceled, and I didn't see Saul again for about 3 more years, and at the time, I was a part-time production assistant at Late Night with Conan O'Brien, which meant I get to drive the van for them, and every once in a while I get to pick up props. And on this particular afternoon, I was picking up Max Weinberg's chicken outfit, and I'm driving, and I'm late, and I'm stuck in traffic, and I get very nervous in traffic. And I'm going to 8th Avenue, and I go by Sony Studios, and at the gate, Saul's there. And I want to get out and walk a half a block and just go talk to him, say I'm sorry, and give him a handshake. But I don't. I'm late. So I drive back to 30 Rock. I drop that off, and then I go back to the gate, and he's not there. And then a month or 2 later, this time I'm picking up like gorilla costumes, and I'm driving, and I go by, and I notice that there's literally a built-in fence in front of Sony Studios, and they were knocking it down, and they were going to be building condos. So I've never seen Saul since. But in my life, I'd say the past 3 years, I think of Saul often. This is sad, but I have 2 dreams all the time, very reoccurring dreams. And one of them is I'm in college. It's the end of the semester. And there's one class that I just have forgot to go to. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? And I have a major panic attack, and I wake up because there's that class. Then there's my other dream. And I'm in Midtown, and I'm at a red, a do not walk, and I'm right across the street. And there's a bunch of people. And then I look, and then there's a bunch of people on the other side of the street. And then in his Yankee jacket and his greasy hair and his skeet shooting sunglasses with a big smile is Saul. And then the light changes, and we walk towards each other. And I shake his hand, and I hug him. I miss you, Saul.